Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. And we're live around the world. Yes, around the world. Hello there. I see you, America and Canada and Belgium and Netherlands and, yes, Sierra Leone. I see you too. What's up? This is going to be a good one. I am stoked. Today's guest is, well, let's just say cool. Very cool. Just cool. He's a marketer. He's a thought leader. But he's also put in time on the sales side, so he knows what he's talking about when it comes to that alignment factor. But not even that. He's also a musician, an author, an athlete, and in my opinion, all-around badass. CMO of Brandcast, Chris Schreiber. How are you, sir?
Hey, what's up?
Man, you got stuff going on. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today.
I'm excited.
So the theme for today, it's our marketing leadership series, getting people like yourself, thought leaders in the marketing space, changing things up, exploring, pushing on the future, having conversations and figuring out, how do you look at strategy? How do you look at these different things? So that's what today's show is all about. And one of the things I like to do to start here is I want to pass this over to you. It's a little heavy, but I think you got it. This is Thor's hammer. So go ahead and take that and smash for me some kind of marketing myth, some kind of bogus strategy you're hearing out there that you just want to set the record straight.
Got it. Yeah. I think a lot of marketers are under the impression that they're managing design well and strategically, when in reality, what they're doing is having a lot of internal meetings and making decisions on personal aesthetics.
So we think with all this conversation, we think we're making rational decisions, but when it comes down to it, just what looks pretty.
I think it's hard to not go down that route. At the end of the day, design is one of the most most personal subject areas, more so than a lot of us even realize. And it's one of sort of the most sophisticated areas for marketers to try to develop a mastery around.
Right.
And a lot of times it's kind of counterintuitive of how you make design decisions that are good for the business versus design decisions that sort of make you feel good or make your CEO feel good, et cetera. And so, learning to kind of divorce the personal from the really sort of strategic decision-making in designs, it's an important thing for kind of any marketer to do. And I think the myth is that because you've sort of generated some type of internal alignment around some subset of the company that you've kind of succeeded with design.
Right.
And
why does this happen?
I know it myself. Why does it happen? I think it's very hard to not talk about the things that you immediately have an opinion on. You immediately have opinion on colors and images and video and tone. You're a marketer. You're just sort of wired that way to have opinions. And chances are other people you work with are as well. Versus it's often less intuitive to put in the time to really lay out user journey. Right? To really lay out the results that you're trying to drive, the journey that you're trying to put people on. And that's more of a learned skill. And a lot of times I think marketers, think that's more of a product responsibility, and that they're more there for brand decisions. But, all of us are responsible for interactive, particularly if you have digital in your title, like you are. Part of your job is user experience. And so you sort of have no choice but to go down some of that discipline. Right. Be more familiar with it. And so when you do that, you put in the time around sort of mapping out user journey, mapping out sort of the results and the paths that you're trying to get to, then the decisions around aesthetics take on sort of a different shape, because you actually do have a common language now for what you're trying to accomplish. And it actually does help, I think, divorce some of the personal aesthetic from the sort of shared goals and shared alignment around what you're trying to actually do with this design. But a lot of marketers skip that step, or they sort of have to it. And they spend a lot of time internally just discussing sort of, stylistic elements like sort of color palettes and other things that, don't necessarily have a North Star for what are you really trying to accomplish with it.
Yeah, almost like sweating the details when that's not even it's like not even the right question to be asking about.
Hmm.
And I like how you brought up the fact that sometimes we defer this to product now that product has gotten itself so built out. But I think back to, we've had conversations about this too, where back in the old days, marketing was like the voice of the customer in those product discussions. And almost like with the digital world, we got so busy, we sort of relegated that to someone else. But in the past, we were so connected to the consumer that we were able to do the marketing, inform product, kind of own that user experience. And it looks like we've gotten away from that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think chances are like successful marketers are staying like really close to the customer base and
Right.
do have an understanding of them, but that may not translate into sort of the nuts and bolts of customer journey and user journey when it turns into the stuff you're creating online. Because it may say all the right things. You may have sort of nailed the customer insights on a copy level, but that doesn't necessarily like get them to do the action that's most profitable to you.
Mm. So what's the missing link there? I know you've mentioned mapping the journey. How do you do that and use the data and any kind of suggestions, like for people that want to, they're like, I probably have a problem with this too. I love pretty design. How do they get away from that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly data is important. Like, you need to know where you're coming from
Yeah.
to have a sense of where you're going. So, I think
Right. Yeah.
it's important to lay out like what you're trying to accomplish in terms of behavior, in terms of like actions that you're trying to drive online, and map out sort of the full like decision tree or the full click path that you could be driving, and each one of those really being like a deliberate decision that you're making for the content and the user journey. um, and you need to then I think you need to lay that out in terms of what your path is and get alignment on that, and then sort of go back to the data that you do have, and have a sense of what it looks like today, because you might be bringing some pretty radical changes to your design or content. So some of that data just you may have to throw away because it just doesn't look anything like it in the future, but it still is your starting point, and it's also sort of where you bring it back around on aesthetic. You're unlikely to please everyone with the design.
Mm.
You're got about 100% chance, but chances are if you're all working for the same company, you're all kind of aligned in terms of where you're trying to go, which is growth for the business.
Right.
And you can have a pretty on the level discussion in terms of, well, this is where we're coming from in terms of how much we've been able to drive so far. You may or may not like this aesthetic path that we're going down, but what we can have a conversation about is whether it's working or not relative to where we're coming from. And
Right.
if you're showing growth, against whatever like the metrics are you choose are important, then on some level your aesthetic choices are working for you. And likewise, if they're not, even if you're in love with aesthetic, you have to sort of take a hard look at it. But
Right. Right.
balancing that sort of aesthetic decision, which is very subjective, with the data, which if it's wired up correctly, shouldn't be that subjective.
Shouldn't be. Yeah.
And I think that's how you sort of try to have that conversation sort of on both levels at the same time.
Okay. That makes sense. And a lot of what I'm getting from that is that mapping out that process allows you to isolate the right data. And then that's like your backstops where, I really like to do this, but the stats show X. Or like, okay, we're going to test out this new design, but if it doesn't perform as well as this other one, then it's out the door, and making decisions that way.
I think it's right. And I think it's actually like a faster path to internal alignment, because when you're talking about, brand and stylistic components, it's literally infinite what you could do.
Right.
There's not infinite numbers of, actions that you can drive.
True.
It's a pretty short list, and you can have a pretty focused conversation on sort of like the priority action, the secondary and the tertiary, and get to alignment faster on that type of subject.
Sure.
And then it's all about like, are your choices working or not? But until you've sort of laid that out and gotten alignment on that, like the aesthetic decision can be like endless, because you haven't really agreed on the purpose of it. And yeah, I think that's what we're trying to get at.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any stories or examples of this? Because when I think aesthetic, it's one of those cool words, or just design. Have you seen this play out with Brandcast or with maybe some of your clients?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I probably won't name names, but
Name the guilty or the successful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's a good sort of, it's a good point in terms of why we built Brandcast in the first place, which is, probably one of the myths that I could do as my like secondary myth is
Yeah,
that
smash.
you can build the perfect website in some type of series of internal meetings. There's historically been this sort of pressure on marketers to feel that you were going to somehow design the perfect website in your Photoshop files and InDesign files because it was just going to be so expensive to build it and it was going to be so time consuming. You didn't really have the license to get it wrong because
Mm.
you're going to have to go through this whole process again if you did get it wrong. So you should always be very thoughtful about your website process, but you should also expect that I forget what the phrase is, something like, no battle plan lasts, until you actually are on the battlefield. This is totally not what the phrase is, but
No, it's true. I even looked it
first
up one time.
contact, I
It's
think,
like
with battle. That's what it is.
it's like
No
one of those,
plan survives first contact with battle.
right. It's like a Van Helmuth type. There's an old German general that said that. Yeah, it was, but it's true. But like that makes sense though. Taking that and then tying it to websites,
Mm-hmm.
be intentional and plan for changes, plan to adapt it, not just big waterfall development of your website. 7 months later, you have a new one and then people hate it.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
okay, what's not working, what's working, and kind of more of that sprint type mentality of what kind of changes could we make and be responsive to our customer.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that whole sort of lean startup, like build, measure, learn
Yeah,
mentality is very much a marketer's mentality when it comes to interactive. But that's not necessarily available to you if your process for developing websites is prohibitively expensive or slow
sure.
because just you've chosen certain paths. And so that was a lot of the vision for our company, was kind of liberate marketing teams to be able to have a lot of freedom around the design of their sites, but take away the most time consuming and slowest part of it, which was just the development aspect.
Right.
And historically, the sort of the companies that did that were also kind of handcuffing you on design at the same time, and so you had to make that trade off. And we just think like that's not a trade off you can actually make as a marketer.
Right.
You cannot sacrifice design freedom just for speed. So if you didn't have to, you might be able to have a tool that can really live in that build, measure, learn state and just work with you to get to the answer based on what's actually happening with what you're putting out versus the hypothesis of what might happen based on your InDesign files.
Yeah, no, for sure. And no perfect site. You're adjusting, you're adapting. And
Mm-hmm.
I love the direction this sort of the latest, I don't know, 5-10 years have gone with marketing and tech. It's almost like, I was a former coder, so I can rag on IT, but IT could be really challenging.
Mm-hmm.
The boards, the task delays, and the waterfalls, and we just want to get some stuff out there. We got a lot of quick start marketers just want to deploy and test things out. Maybe not
Mm-hmm.
farm on it, just try a little. I think it was like a Tim Ferriss, like shoot the or like a Jim Collins, like shoot the little musket ball, not the cannonball. Like
Mm-hmm.
get some little ones out there. But when you have that the IT request queue, and so what I liked about marketing automation was it sort of took a little bit of that away. It's like, hey, marketer, you can build your own landing page and your email. You don't need someone techie to do it for you. And so it sounds like this is just taking a little bit further, where it's like, okay, not just the landing page, but your whole site can be something that doesn't need a coder to do.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. That sort of very testing, hypothesis based rhythm, like we're an extension of that, but you would still kind of the same starting point, and you've got these amazing tools with AdWords and sort of the corresponding landing page, and a lot of companies use us to start there to try to figure out sort of what's working, but then you want to extend those learnings pretty quickly to the broader websites, to your sales materials. For us, that's why we kind of try to design the platform to really be something for the whole customer journey. So as you're
Right.
getting insights from your landing pages, that's a really easy process to pull in those assets directly to your sales decks or to your website. It's not two totally siloed
Yeah.
products, which it typically is today for most companies. There's a landing page toolkit, there's sort of a corporate website toolkit, and then there's a sales materials toolkit. And that makes it really tricky to kind of
Yeah.
traverse one to the other. And it just doesn't need to be that way. You have the fewer sort of the entry points that you have to work with, the better, as long as like they have all the main toolkits that you need.
Right.
And I think,
Yeah, less
that's,
apps too, right? I mean, you've got 3 or 4 apps, 3 or 4 subscriptions, doing all these different things. I love when you can consolidate some of that, but because the consolidation then helps with being able to have one talk to the other, and that
yep.
was the challenge when everything's disjointed. You got to go get some app to integrate them all.
Hmm.
When they're all part of the same thing, they actually start communicating.
Hmm.
It's cool. You're kind of and it really is from talking. You're kind of this like sage of the website world, and especially where you're taking with brandcast and everything. Do you kind of get a sense for where the future is on that? Like where sites going? I mean, it sounds like a lot of connected stuff, but like, what are you seeing?
Yeah. I mean, I think, I guess I would put it this way simply, like, if you could make everything exist online and everything be interactive, you would. Of course you would. You would get more data. You would have more opportunity for sort of automation and workflows, but you don't do that today because it's just laughable to think that every single thing you're making could live online and be its own
Right.
sort of custom
You
website.
got like PDFs. You've
You
got
have PDFs, you have
downloads,
PowerPoints, you
PowerPoints. Yeah.
have these things that you have forgotten didn't used to exist and won't always exist. We're in a phase right now where certain things seem standard and sort of revocable and other things don't. But we're definitely on a one-way street to sort of everything coming online, because at the end of the day, like, more data is better, more insight
True.
about what people are interacting with is better, as long as the sacrifice is not too large that you have to make to be able to put it out in some type of interactive state. So the barriers to creating like interactive content are going down every year. But the other sort of lagging factor was, yeah, but what am I sacrificing on the design standpoint? Like, just because I
Right.
can get it
Right.
online doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily solve all my issues, because I need a lot of design flexibility because of where we sort of started the conversation.
Yeah. No one will
So
read it if it looks like terrible.
yeah, and I need the ability to change it quickly.
Yeah.
And you can do that obviously with slide decks. You
Sure.
can learn quickly what's working, and you are sort of in the build, measure, learn mentality. The problem is you don't actually have data usually. It's like,
Right.
it's very sparse data, and it's very like isolated data.
Hmm.
Like, it's just about your sales deck. So maybe you're using
Right.
some type of clear slide type tracking device, but it's still sort of singular versus like a whole view of a customer. So I think those are big trends in terms of the barriers to getting to publishing sites just going down and down and down, less need for manual coding. The design capability though going up and up within
Yeah.
this like no code universe, which
Right.
allows you to start thinking about a lot of things that aren't websites today, that could be websites tomorrow. So that's definitely one big component. The world of mobile web design is still a very like nascent field, and a lot of marketers are going to have to sort of learn to master that. And I guess I wouldn't say mobile, I would say responsive web design.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
And so, the first trend was like, well, I'll just shrink it down into like one feed. Like, I'll just take it verbatim and put it into a feed. And I guess that's mobile
Right.
design. That's obviously like the quickest path to getting your mobile website up.
Sure.
But you do need to be able to look at those behavior paths on mobile and see what's actually working. And you do need to be able to maintain a fairly different user experience on all of your mobile properties from your desktop properties. So that's the responsibilities there. You just need to do that. Now, what do the tools look like to be able to enable that? And that's where the trend just becomes, um, just moving away from just shrinking it into a single feed, into tools that really allow you to kind of give a pretty, significantly different user experience on
Right.
mobile from desktop, but it's not so onerous to maintain that that you can't put
Got
in
to
the
put in
time.
those requests again, right?
Yeah.
Oh, please make this mobile friendly. And then, you're disconnected from the person building it, from the marketer who kind of maybe understands the customer. That's really interesting. Thinking about the different experiences between mobile and desktop,
Hmm.
we understand that that's true, but if you really think about, it's just such a different experience. Not only is it a smaller window, but what is going on here, and what do the people need to get before they leave, or is there a call to action? You're right. It's like think of it differently, but at the same time, creating like 3 different websites, 3 different flows could be challenging. So I could see where technology could come in to say, actually, don't worry, we're going to help you model that out.
Yeah. Well, and I think, what you can always look to like AdWords to be the trend for what anything will happen in the world of marketing technology.
Right.
So, you think about the way AdWords works today is that the old way of AdWords is I put my exact keyword, I put my exact ad copy, and that's a little bit of the like, oh, I need to get it perfect before it launches mentality. Yeah, the way AdWords works today is that you give them a bunch of keywords that you might want to do some type of broad match to tell you where am I seeing the highest search volume, and you give them
Yep.
a bunch of variants of your ad copy, and it comes back to you and says, here's the best combination of keyword and ad copy, and the algorithm, the machine did that for you. You gave it all the inputs. It did work that was far more sophisticated than you could ever do in terms of looking at all the variations,
Right.
and it showed you sort of the path. Like the same thing will happen with creative, where
Mm.
you will be able to put more and more copy and image and media variants into your digital marketing, and there will be sort of some type of AI or like algorithmic layer that just tells you here's what it is, and it could be on a device level too. Like here's sort of your highest performing mobile experience based on the inputs that you gave me in desktop. I think that's further out, but we sort of know where it's going just because
Yeah.
we see it working in other mediums that are more basically like simplistic than a full website is.
Right. That's smarter content. That's interesting. Thinking, okay, well, here's the things we want to convey. Maybe here's some potential pictures that may fit, treating even your content like a landing page you're trying to optimize.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a PDF, you'd have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at all the different combinations and having something smarter than you behind the scenes, adjusting it, kind of doing that multivariate testing and optimization to figure out, oh, actually, in mobile we do this and we have the image here and that image, and that all works the best. And if it's on a desktop, here's the best look for it. That's
Mm-hmm.
really cool to think about, things getting so dynamic. I mean, we're used to seeing just, the site. I think in the past the site could be dynamic, but it was like the CMS that controlled it, and that wasn't tucking to the marketing software or the CRM. But now that's starting to converge, and now we're seeing not only is it those things, but the whole content itself gets on there. I like it. Kind of the clickbaity thing I was in my head as you were talking was like, Chris Schreiber, death of PowerPoint, or like death of the PDF, like PDF killer. Because wouldn't you like to have information on it? And I've seen apps that do that, but again, they're just like one little micro app in the whole grand scheme of the things. And then is it even worth getting it? Does it connect to Pardot? Whereas
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
this case, it's a bigger swath of coverage where it makes it more worth it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think I could totally talk about the death of PDF all day long, but it would not be sort of a one-to-one, like just use this app instead of the PDF and you'll be better off. It's more like update your approach,
Hmm.
and really sort of just like bring your sales enablement approach in line with your digital marketing approach. Like you're already most likely a lot further along in terms of the sophistication of your infrastructure for your digital marketing than you are for
Right.
sales enablement. You probably have marketing automation. You probably have analytics set up. You probably have a path for testing landing pages, and then you look at the sales enablement side, and it's like, okay, you're basically doing the sort of old school world of just meeting internally, discussing what you think is the right headline, putting
Right.
it to a PowerPoint, sending it out, maybe getting a little bit of data. That data doesn't say anything else other than what this person has been clicking on for your one deck. Whereas like if you could marry that data set with what you already have in your digital marketing stack and
Mm-hmm.
see really like the behavior trends for what they do in your website, what they do with your sales materials, the content they've clicked on, that's where you want to get to.
Right.
And so I think for us, we think sales enablement is a big area that needs to sort of come up into the world of kind of just modern digital marketing optimization practices. But you can't do that till it becomes interactive.
Right. And then when Brandcast meets up with some large CRM and they both merge, the world basically ends. There's like a World War error for marketers everywhere, and it just like that'd
I
be
mean,
the
that's a
perfect
big part of the
world, right?
vision. I mean, I
Yeah.
think the CRM, like it's as I've gone through the process, realized like, all right, the CRM is definitely not going away. Like that's
Right.
that living, breathing, like hub of information that sort of all things can take cues from, and vice
Right.
versa, that you can bring information back into it. Marketing automation, I think, is still really important, partially because like email is not going away
Right.
as like a really important medium to both authenticate people, but also communicate. Like there's still a lot more people that open emails than I expect, given that like it's almost impossible to reach me, I feel like, with spam mail yet.
Sure.
I think they work. And so if you have CRM here to stay, and you just need to have like a really well organized sales team keeping data hygiene up, marketing automation being your linchpin for for data collection, but also most importantly like workflows, just automated workflows to
Yeah.
do something with those data inputs. Then sort of the other really important piece is the presentation layer, what you're putting online, your website, your materials, your content. And right now, it's this sort of bifurcated world of offline, online
Yep.
stuff that you're putting out there. And that's where I sort of started the conversation of like, for sure, the offline dominoes are going to fall and you're going to bring it all online because you've already set up your tech stack for it. Like
Hmm.
you should be getting as many inputs as possible. It was just too hard historically to bring sales materials online.
Yeah, when the technology catches up, there's that the knee in the curve, and the exponential thing just takes off, and then suddenly we all have an iPhone in our hand. It's crazy.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those things like you think things are standard and will always be this way, and then one day you see something that you can never unsee. You're like, okay, actually, I was wrong. Everything is changing now.
For me, one of it was when I saw a demo of Qualified. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No.
It's like chat. It's like a chat app, but it ties into Pardot and Salesforce, and
Hmm.
they're able to see, okay, you're from San Francisco. You're on the site now, and then here's what you're looking at. Like it showed you the live view of someone looking at your site, and you
Hmm.
can chat with them if you want to. And I was like, oh, the worlds are colliding. The worlds are
Yep.
merging. You can't unsee that. To your point, there's these changes that happen. So that's really cool to see where web is going. And I think it kind of is that thing that once we got it built, we sort of left it alone and didn't realize it's actually like our biggest asset.
Yep.
Most people hit that.
I think it's right. I mean, I think people sort of they leapfrogged from sort of websites to apps,
Yeah,
and sort of forgot about like, well, just bringing sort of my full array of external content that I'm putting in the world interactive. And
sure.
some companies, the app may be the right path, like that's the primary communication vehicle, and they can do away with some other things. But most companies, like the app is not the primary communication vehicle with their
Right.
customers, and so they're in this sort of fragmented world of offline online content, and
Right.
that's definitely
Right.
a trend that we feel pretty strongly is going to change.
Well, let's take a step back and I want to talk to you. You're the marketing leader at your company. You are the one looking at like maybe the biggest of the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
When you first came to Brandcast, or just as a CMO, what do you look at? Like how do you first look at a company you come into and then try to organize all these different layers and all these different aspects of marketing, your overall strategy, your overall approach to marketing for a company?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big question. I was really attracted to this to company to Brandcast because it was speaking to a pain point that I had felt kind of time and time again.
Sure.
And that was just specifically around like website creation and management. It always just felt harder than it should have been, more expensive than it should have been, slower than it should have been. But I never in any of my previous head of marketing jobs found a solution that works perfectly other than just a very expensive development team.
Yeah, right.
That at the end of the day, that's still probably like the best solution, but that's a tough one because that's a tough like functional area to manage
Mm-hmm.
as a marketer. Just like you don't necessarily have the background, and if it really is a really talented developer, chances are they want to be doing things beyond just your marketing websites.
Marketing, yeah.
But so I was attracted to that opportunity. I think that gave me some level of like immediate sense of how to position ourselves and market ourselves. And so I try to organize like a lead generation program around what I immediately knew. But I think
Mm-hmm.
with any job, particularly like an earlier stage company, the full picture doesn't sort of set in for a little while until you start going with what going with messaging and positioning that's familiar to you, and seeing how it's working to actually realize like, is this the full story or not? Or there's something bigger. And for me, it's a mix of getting out and market a lot, being on as many sales calls as you can, being at a lot of different types of events, speaking at events, trying to get feedback there, and just like a lot of sort of internal interviewing, really trying to hear the way product teams talk and think about the product, and because a lot of times like the very specific language choices of your product team can be very fascinating because they are not wedded to any type of like brand positioning that you're using Usually
Right.
they try to the most efficient language possible to describe what they think is meaningful.
Sure.
And so, for me, I try to just get in the bunker with the sales and product teams to really figure out what's working and what's not working, and then just sort of continually test the market, through thought leadership and through sort of lead generation. And for us, what the way it's evolved is that this is a much bigger story than improving just the website management process for websites you already have.
Sure.
The big story is the webification story.
Okay.
All of this content that, um, as we've been talking throughout this conversation, all of this sort of business content that should be online, but no one just has even thought about how you would ever merge your entire sales library into websites.
Sure.
It seemed laughable and impossible, but as we've sort of gone down the path, I realized like, wow, the world of PDFs and PowerPoints are ripe for disruption. They've
Sure.
been around for a long time, not for great reasons. You're sacrificing a lot of customer insight by using them. And if the barriers went down on the ability to publish a website and have a lot of like control over design of it, you would do that. And like the benefits are pretty massive, just a much more complete customer profile that you can get, a lot more positive experiences on mobile, because like if you open up a PowerPoint or PDF on your phone, you're just like not that motivated to spend time with it.
Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's sort of evolved from just a website management improvements to a much bigger story around webification and like the tidal wave that I see coming. I think Brandcast is a part of it. And so that, when you have sort of those extra layers of insight about the opportunity, you have to really recalibrate how you're doing marketing. You have to, I think the big thing is you have to sell the story internally. You have to really paint the bigger picture and get people aligned and excited.
Yep.
And if you do that, that's great. But then people sort of get impatient. They're like, okay, now get that story out there.
Yeah.
I
Right.
love that story. Go run with it. And so I think at early stage companies, you have multiple phases of reinvention. That's just part of the journey. And even I worked at Google for a long time. It was the same
Mhm.
thing. Like we completely reinvented ourselves. It felt like sort of every couple of years. I was there from 2005 to 2008. And so like, that was before they had even launched the Chrome browser. They just barely starting to talk about mobile. Like,
Mhm.
they were sort of priming the company for like this, we are going to be a completely different operation a year from now, and sort of constantly putting out the reasoning for why they were about to change things so much. And I think, it's really important for the marketing team and executive team to kind of always be assessing the sort of the market that you're going after, the why you're going after it, and how you're communicating that. So kind of a long, it's a big question. So I'm
It
giving you
is.
a long answer, but
No
that
worries. Yeah, no, I mean, it's good to hear where your mind goes on that too. And kind of the bonus, it sounds like it's fun when you're the customer of your own thing too,
yeah,
because then you don't have to make up some story or find a story from some, IT customer. I once almost, I was offered a job helping, it would be marketing for developer tools for Java. And it was like, man,
yeah.
it's a lot more fun selling to marketers if you're a marketer.
I think
Um,
that's right.
it's
I mean, I think that's definitely advice I would give to kind of anyone that's earlier in their career. Like if you're in the startup world, if you're in the tech world, like your likelihood for success is definitely higher if you can feel the pain, if you can get the pain, versus having to be sort of secondhand hearing about other people's experience with it. It's a harder path when you don't feel it personally.
yeah, agreed. Agreed. A harder path, and that's cool. We'll come back to some career tips too. That's a good one. My question is like, who are you? Where did you come from? How did you become musician, soccer rock star, Googler, CMO now? Like,
Yeah.
take me back, like
Uh,
little Chris.
Yeah, I grew up in Boston.
Nice.
Music's always been a huge part of my life. A lot of like creative DNA in my family. We got a number of like painters and film directors and actors, and I think the music bug just kind of hit me. So music was always a real passion. I was always kind of trying to like take it from the idea to a song and to play with others to a band to just keep pushing it. further and played a lot of different instruments. And was always really
Like
serious
what you
about,
play?
I was most serious about percussion until
Nice.
sort of after college, but yeah, all the way through college, like percussion was kind of my main focus, and just like loved all forms of percussion, loved, jazz, rock, sort of West African, like gamelan, all
Sick.
types of stuff I was into. And then when I left college, I didn't like started to just play a lot of like piano and guitar on the side, but then kind of switched in my mid 20s to playing like piano and guitar with bands, mainly just because I got sick of dragging around drum sets. I think
Yeah. Yeah, I
it's
have a buddy that does that.
very
You got to
thankless
pack your whole
task.
car, right? The
The
whole car
worst.
is full.
Yeah, it's the worst. I mean, one thing I always loved about drums, there's a couple things. Like one, like getting all four limbs to do something different is like a really major breakthrough.
Yeah,
Um, and it's like really fascinating to like divorce your brain from your body that way, because it's just so counterintuitive that all four limbs would be doing a different action. And I always loved
just
like
like muscle memory. Is that what that is? Like, how do you get
I
to
mean,
that Zen
it
moment?
is. I think that is part of it. Is you do all these things very repetitively, so you teach your individual limbs sort of different muscle memory, and then you start to learn how to do it kind of all at the same time.
Got it.
And there's sort of like endless. Like you're very rote at the early stage of your drumming career. Like you're just kind of doing the exact same beat because at
Yeah,
least you got all four limbs to be able to do that one beat, and then you just keep learning sort of like individually with the the kick drum, the hi-hat, the snare, whatever, start to get off of that very rote rhythm. And
sure.
it's a cool just sort of infinite process.
Yeah.
And then yeah, the other I think major influence on me was always sports. Like growing up in Boston, definitely like a huge sports town. I kind of played all sports throughout my life, but soccer was the one that I got the most serious about and played through college. And I think my uncle played football at Notre Dame, and
Oh
and
wow.
came from a pretty serious athletic family, and he was also a really smart guy. And he said something to me that's always stuck with me, and I think it's so right on, which is that like sports is like a really essential thing when you're younger, because it teaches you to experience all of the most extreme emotions in a safe place. The highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. So you kind of get broken in as a human being. You experience those highs and lows, but you're still on the field. Nothing actually that serious happened.
Right.
But you've
Especially,
now,
especially if you really get into it, you create that feeling, that especially the low of losing or winning that game.
but it's good because like now you've experienced that emotion, and it
Yeah.
might be the first time you ever experienced that level of frustration or anger or sadness or joy or whatever. But like once you experience it, you're a little broken in. So when something happens in your life later, you're a little bit more ready to handle things just because you
Yeah.
had that. I always thought that was like such an interesting way of thinking about things, and I think it's totally right on. And I definitely like have taken a lot of things from just sort of what I learned about working on teams, on sports teams and being part of the team and coaching into my career. I think it's both of them, music and sports, I think have had a big impact on like who I am professionally.
Yeah, I could see that being the case. And wow, like two different aspects, but experiencing those emotions while at the same time expressing the creativity in all four limbs and just really getting into it. And it's almost like you see that too, the that marketing world where it kind of takes the analytical and the creative and it sort of meshes them together. You got the measures for the 4-4 time, but at the same time you kind of riff it a little bit and
Totally.
do your own thing.
I think that, yeah, that's an awesome analogy. That's totally right on.
Sweet, sweet. So what made you then go to school for poli-sci? Well, you didn't go to music school or, you
Yeah.
know,
I mean, I took a lot of music classes. I poli-sci, I think, I actually thought like like studying government was a really interesting way to study other countries.
got
Like you sort of got some history in there, you got culture in there, but you also learned about sort of the power structures. And so I ended up taking a lot of like foreign government classes. And I think that's what probably tipped me over in terms of just the number of credits for poli-sci. Because I remember being a sophomore, is like history, psychology, and poli-sci were all equal in terms of the number of credits I had. I could have gone any three directions, but then there was like a West African government or like an African government class that I was really excited about, and there was like another, I think like Asian government class that I was interested in. I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to be a poli-sci
Guess
major.
you're
Just
poli-sci, yeah.
yeah. And I still think that. I mean, I think like, studying governments of other countries is a way to sort of learn a lot about a country.
Yeah.
And I think in this day and age, certainly I'm still paying a lot of attention to what's going on politically. I think I always have, but like that's definitely a majority of the podcasts I listen to.
Right. Yeah. And you could tell it's a passion. I mean, you're taking these courses that to other people, they'd be like, oh my gosh, like, why would I take that? But
Yeah.
if you're excited about it, then yeah, do what excites you. Do you think, well, I mean, what do you think you draw on, maybe after the fact from your marketing? Does that PolySci come in place, or the study of other cultures or people, or is it just that sort of other passion?
I don't think so. I mean, I think, liberal arts college is a lot about it's like learning how to learn,
Okay. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and learning how to write. So when um, I was finishing up college, all I had left was my thesis, and I was writing a thesis around sort of like the consolidation of media, and how that had been used in both like Nazi Germany and Soviet Union to actually like bring forward these like terrible regimes. And
Right.
this was this is right after 9/11. There was a lot of consolidation in media happening, a lot of sort of question marks about where we were going in terms of manipulating media to drive to the Iraq War.
Mm.
And so I had this whole sort of like heavy-handed thesis about how consolidation in media in the US is putting us on a path towards totalitarianism. And I actually got a
Sure.
job at the Conan O'Brien show. And Conan's like a very deep academic, like
Really?
double major at Harvard, American culture and American history.
No kidding.
And I was like deep in the heart of writing this thesis. I kind of laid it out for him, my whole argument. And that was, I'll always remember that point because it was a real sort of crossover point for me, going from like the academic mindset to the real world mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like, let me just sort of play out your thesis for you. Like I am working
No,
for,
wait, this is Conan saying this to you?
yeah,
Wow.
I am an anchor on NBC, which is owned by GE, which is going to want certain things from the government to keep it afloat. So you're saying that I am going to be limited in what I can say on my show because of this thesis around consolidation media, and that sort of our ability to have free speech and my personal ability, Conan O'Brien, to say what I want to show is going to go away. He's like, let's just play that out in terms of what I'm going to go do tonight. He's like, none of this is true. he's
Really?
like, you're a very theoretical mindset here, and I take the point around the historical implications, but sort of helped me level set with like how the world actually works versus how it theoretically could work. And I don't know, it just really changed. I just remember it was such a sort of grounding for me to get out of sort of the books and into like the real world of of careers and jobs and people, and move from that sort of theoretical academic mindset into real world. And I feel like that transition point for me. Is like, all right, well, I guess I learned how to write a little bit. I learned how to research in college, but a lot of the actual content I learned probably is not going to be that relevant to having jobs in media or having jobs in tech.
What was, I mean, were you kind of like pissed after that? I mean, Conan kind of was
No, it
like,
was awesome. I think
cool.
he like, because I immediately got it, because he was like, I'm not going to speak. He didn't speak in broad strokes, sort of philosophical stuff. He's like, I'm just going to speak in plain language about
Right.
real things.
Right. Like,
And like,
I'm not going to be anyone's stooge.
yeah, he's like, that's, that is not true for my life today. And let's think about all things that would have to happen for that to become true for my life. And how likely do you really think that is? Uh,
Right.
I think it just helped me get away from a tone that was very sort of, I don't know, like overly alarmist in some ways, and not
Sure.
as rooted in the actual flow of communication and media, and much more rooted in just what I was reading from what had happened a long time ago. So
Right.
it's like, I think he was engaged by the subject matter in the thesis, but I think he also just wanted to like help me reel it in terms of
Sure.
what really are my predictions right now, like to help it be a little bit more, I think, useful in what the argument I was trying to make, versus sort of a really big sweeping argument that was just sort of off base.
What was that like working with him? And did you work with him
It
on
was
a daily basis?
it was cool. I mean, I was I was on a general staff, and I worked on sort of whatever kind of needed to be done that day.
Huh.
It was like just an entry level job. You know, the most interesting work that I did was under the line producer who wrote interview segments and doing like researching guests that were coming on, and just trying to come up with like an angle for questions.
Mm.
And you know, that was some of the most like interesting work for me. But
So
you
how did you do that real quick? Like how do you look for an angle when you're doing those what went through your mind when you're looking at people?
you know, you try to like just look at what they're up to recently, look at their career, try to find like a, you know, a unique angle that doesn't feel like it's been talked about a million times.
Sure.
Like what I remember Russell Simmons was coming on, and I was doing some research on him, and I think he had like trademarked the word deaf, which I thought was
Huh.
like really funny. Like, whoa, you own the word deaf, because like deaf, especially like, you know, early 2000 was still kind of being used in like
Yeah.
more kind of like, I don't know, it didn't feel like a word that could be trademarked,
Right. Somehow he had it. It was
but
like
it,
their whole spoof on that on the show kind of thing, or
that was sort of like the angle that I came up with, and like they used it a little bit and kind of like went off into a different direction. But
sure.
I remember that was one of the questions that did get asked of like, so you own the word deaf.
Right, right. Well, I
Yeah.
think, I mean, that's important because I mean, even to this day, I mean, whether it's TV or podcasts or whatnot, it's, looking at people and seeing what kind of, I don't say angle, but what's their story, because oftentimes it's those experiences that maybe shape their later view of how things go.
Yep. Yep. But yeah, I moved on pretty quickly from media to tech, and went to Google after that. And
What was that like? Being at Google?
that was definitely different. You know, I was there when I was there. It was about 5,000 people globally when I started, and I
Okay.
left 4 years later, and it's 25,000 people globally.
Holy, like,
Yeah,
how did you went from 5 to 25 and you were
yeah,
there? This is
some,
happening.
something like that. So it was,
It
yeah,
is.
it's just every year, just rapid growth and rapid evolution of the company. And I spent most of my time just working like the consumer app side. So I originally worked on the Gmail team, and that was sort of as Google evolved from being very focused on search and ads to sort of adding the third pillar to search ads and apps.
Yeah.
And this is even sort of really before the mobile explosion. I was there 2005 to 2008. But it was fun to really be on that like consumer app side, as you could see, like just, you know, the commitment and like all this opportunity around photos and blogging and email and calendars. And, you know, probably the one that's like stuck with me the most was Google Docs.
Yeah.
Like Google Docs was an acquisition,
Really?
company called Rightly, I think. Um, and it was, yeah, I mean, this vision for like online word processing,
I think
that
I
like,
remember rightly. That's weird.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that acquisition happened, and then it sort of went quiet for a while. Then Google rolled out its product, which was Google Docs. And
To the horror of Microsoft everywhere.
well, I think it was like such a cool vision, such a like feeling that this is inevitable, but it took a while. You know,
Yeah.
I was we were sort of, you know, constantly looking for use cases to market on the team. And the one that kept coming up like really easily for us was just weddings.
Really?
And it was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because you got like all these different time zones, people all different places trying to find one place to sort of have this running conversation with all of these details. So you can see like the email thread would just like go nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And and there were, you know, it wasn't like Google Docs works incredibly well now, I think, with
Agree.
all the sort of multi-tenant collaboration. It definitely had some like bumps in the road earlier on where two people, three people, five people in the same dock at the same time, you could run into some hurdles. But I think the weddings one made sense because chances are you're in lots of different time zones. So you're
Mm-hmm.
less likely to all be in there at the exact same time. And it's also just like probably such a win in terms of one place that you can all go to see the most updated version of something.
Right. Right.
And that was, I just remember that was the use case that sort of made me realize like, wow, this is going to be like,
Yeah. Futuristic. You're
this
like,
is going to be so
yeah.
huge. It's going to be huge for business. It's going to be huge for consumer. Like, and so working on that product was really fun, I think, because I just kept watching it improve.
Right.
And then the Google Apps like enterprise, you know, suite came out,
Oh
and
yeah.
that was, that was one of the linchpins of that offering, still is Google Docs. And so, yeah, I was at Google for about 4 years, and massive growth. Learned a lot about, just how to build like a really high performance culture. Learned a lot about,
Right.
like what I'd say is like risk taking. Like they definitely, I worked on a lot of things that, did not last very long, but
Were you on Wave?
no, Wave was a little bit after my time.
Okay.
But,
AKA Slack.
yeah, yeah, that's true. But yeah, I've worked with startups ever since. But yeah, hopefully can turn one of them into the next Google.
Right now, when I first asked you about it, you said it was different. That was the first word you went to. Was it just like a different culture, different way of operating? What different in all regards? What brings that to mind? And
Well, I meant like specifically it was different from Conant.
oh yeah, I could
Um,
see that. Yeah.
yeah. um, and it hasn't been that different from kind of most places I've worked ever since.
Okay.
There's a rhythm, or at least I certainly like seek out companies that have a culture that remind me of a lot of things that I liked about Google. I think Google, a lot of intelligent people. There was sort of this endless sense of like the potential for innovation,
Right.
and just speed. I mean, just like every single day, just like an expectation for how much you're trying to get done, how much you're trying to push things into the future.
Right.
And I think that was a rhythm that I learned there that I've sort of tried to keep ever since.
That's cool. I see that trend, right? I see that you're involved in like the future products that define how we do things at Google. And it sounds like you're still doing that. You're still in these, and it's like, it's almost like before, thinking about the curve or the chasm, right? You're in the
Mhm.
early stage, you're trying to get that adoption in there, but you like being a part of what the future will be.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think I get excited by that subject, of trying to like envision the future, be sort of right about where it's going, and try to solve the problems before people even get there.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't even know there's a problem and you're solving it for them.
Hmm.
Take it for granted. Like when we took for granted that you had to keep attaching a same revision of a document every time you emailed the update to the rest of the team, and you had like 9 different versions of the doc and your
Yep.
version control and all that. Now it's just like uptime, real time updated. I just send a
Totally.
link out.
Well, and I feel the exact same thing happening with Brandcast, and
Mm,
a lot of the webification aspect of it. Like particularly around sales decks. You think about like what a problem it is when you send a sales deck to a prospect and you like put in the wrong pricing or something. Like, oh, sorry, like don't look at that, and here's
KK,
the new
that
one.
discount's not for you.
Yeah, or like it's so painful if you want to add things or get things wrong, and when you live in the world of web content, like you don't have to have all those emails. You can
Change it.
just change it, and like you're just always fresh on what you're putting in front of them.
Right, right. You don't have to send off a tech request. Good
Yeah.
stuff, man. Good stuff. Hey, where can people connect with you? Throw out some links. Is Twitter good? LinkedIn?
Yeah, Twitter's good. I'm at cousin Chris.
Where does
uh
that come from? Are you like a cousin? Do you have like 1,000 cousins?
I when I first moved to San Francisco, I had a few cousins, and that was sort of how I like met everyone. And so like for like years, everyone, I would be introduced that this is my cousin Kit, my cousin Chris, and then
Cool.
people started to like just knowing me as cousin Chris.
Right.
And then I actually started a band called Cousin Chris.
Really? Right on, man. You owned it. You're like, oh, man,
Yeah,
let's
I was like,
call
I'm just
this.
gonna lean into it. This is
Yeah.
definitely what people are calling me.
Sick. Okay, so at cousin Chris,
At
LinkedIn.
Cousin Chris. Yeah, and LinkedIn, easy to find.
Absolutely. What about like with Brandcast? Anything going on? Should we be checking out webinars coming up or some of this content? Should we check out some of what you're up to?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I think just come to the site brandcast.com, and you'll definitely be able to navigate your way to a lot of things that we're working on there.
And behind the scenes, things are moving and changing. We don't even have any idea. We're just like willing participants in this cool experiment, this sort of futuristic stuff.
That's right. That's right. I think I'm excited to be sort of involved in what I think is going to be kind of the next chapter of the web. Just next chapter of content.
Right on, right on. Well, cool, man.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I mean, I really appreciate it. It's been fantastic.
Yep. Thanks, man. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, anytime, man. And for everyone else out there listening, if you learned something on this, and I know you did because I literally have pages of notes, then share this with someone else. You be a thought leader to someone else and get this in their hands. And then check out Brandcast and see what's cranking, see what the future looks like. And thanks again, Chris. And for everyone out there, this has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will catch you all next time.